The first page of the book introduces us to our author, Nick Carraway. Now, one of the first things he says is he gives the advice that his father gave to him. Whenever you feel like criticising anyone, he told me, just remember all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. Now, this immediately presents quite a interesting character. For someone so young, as is revealed later in the chapter, he seems very worldly wise, and this is probably one of the main reasons why Fitzgerald makes Nick the narrator of the book. He also mentions Gatsby at the beginning. Now, Gatsby is obviously the person who is most important in this book, but we know little about him at this point. Obviously, he's not been mentioned in the first page, and therefore it's interesting that Nick chooses to mention him. But not only does he mention him, he portrays him as someone who is different to any other, and that's the important bit. Nick then goes further on after giving a concise view of his family, and also about the house, the bungalow, which is cost him $80 a month and gives him all the advantages of a millionaire. Now, here's the crucial bit. He moves next to a very large palatial area, which is known as Gatsby's. Now, that's the main bit. He's a Bond man, and that's what he wants to do with his life. And then he starts to talk about Daisy Buchanan, who's his second cousin. Now, Daisy, at the beginning of this novel, is portrayed as a very, in my opinion, innocent and naive character, or certainly for the first kind of 20 pages sort of thing. That's kind of the way I feel about her as a character. But you've also got Tom, who in my opinion is obviously the exact opposite to Daisy. You've got someone who is quite brutish almost and sharp-witted, and this is the opposite of Daisy, who's honestly this kind of innocent and naive person. And this suggests kind of conflict, and this is also probably one of the reasons why they get along so badly. Another thing is that Nick mentions about their house. Their house was an even more elaborate than I expected, a cheerful red and white Georgian colonial mansion overlooking the bay. Now, this is interesting because this mansion kind of purveys the wealth and opulence of their status, which is also something that probably reflects them as well. They consider themselves to be important, they consider themselves to be better than everybody else, and this really, kind of shows their character probably much better than anything Fitzgerald could make them say. Nick arrives and he immediately meets Daisy, who he hasn't seen for a while, and also Miss Baker. Now, Jordan Baker is kind of an interesting kind of force of chaos / goodness in this book, because she mentions, when Nick says she lives in West Egg, she again mentions Gatsby and says you must know Gatsby. And at this point, Nick doesn't know who Gatsby is, and neither does the reader. And that's the more interesting part of this. There's also the first argument between Daisy and Tom in the book, the use of the word hulking, and this again kind of shows the underlying problems that their marriage might have. Tom is also shown to be a more uncivilized character, with the mention of the book The Rise of the Coloured Empires, and he said this is a fine book and we must all, show that white people are better. Now, obviously, with modern attitudes, this is shown to be quite clearly wrong, and from a modern audience, this shows that Tom is much more of a bad character than is previously suggested. However, in 1925, this may not have been the case, and so I kind of leave this point a bit skew-whiff almost, because I can't make up my mind on what that actually shows. I usually go with he's a bad character for thinking this, but at the same time, at the time period, is he a bad character for thinking something that is so common at his time? So I'm just going to leave that. The next bit that's interesting is when Tom gets a phone call, and while Daisy is portrayed as innocent and naive, it's interesting that she knows that Tom's got a woman in New York by the looks of it. And this, again, is quite interesting because Miss Baker has a go at her for not having the decency to phone him at dinner time. She doesn't seem concerned that he's having the affair. She seems concerned that she's ringing at dinner time, which is considered clearly uncouth or something like that. Now, that in itself I always find a little bit of an interesting remark, because is it wrong, or is it Tom more wrong for having the affair and betraying his wife? But with 1925 attitudes, it may have seen something different. Then Daisy goes with Nick onto the lawn, and she talks about, her daughter, and this is one of the interesting things. It's a girl, but she says that the best thing she wishes is for her to be a fool in life. And this is, again, kind of shows that the best thing she wants for her daughter is to get married, and and clearly if she's beautiful, she's going to probably pick a more attractive, best suited husband, and she'll do better for herself in marriage. And that's the interesting thing. Daisy has so little faith almost in what her daughter may achieve or what her daughter could potentially achieve. And I think that it's almost like she's trying to make sure that her daughter does well because she kind of feels that she has not. And I think that's the more interesting bit. Tom gives a sudden announcement about Miss Baker and kind of prevents some doubt about her. She's a nice girl, but they let her all to run around the country in this way. And that's the interesting bit. Daisy almost tries to set Nick up with Miss Baker, and that's something that's kind of developed later on and is kind of quite interesting. As Nick goes home, he sees the green light at the end of Gatsby's dock. This is something that we'll refer to again, but the green light kind of hints at the danger that's lay ahead. Green is symbolically the colour of evil, and I think that is probably the best representation. The light is what is in human souls, or certainly in this book, I feel that there are a few of the characters who probably have green in their souls. Thank you very much for listening.